The rain was coming down in sheets as I drove home, the wipers of my old Volvo working overtime. Chicago in November, cheerful as a funeral. I'm Alden, 46, and I work as a software architect. It's a good job, pays well, but lately I'd been feeling disconnected. Not from work, but from my life. From Isolde, my wife. We'd been married for 15 years, a milestone, sure, but somewhere along the way the spark had dimmed. Or maybe it was just me. Isolde was a vibrant woman, a graphic designer with an infectious laugh and a creative spirit that I envied. I loved her, I really did. But the laughter seemed less frequent, the spark replaced by a weary routine. I chalked it up to the pressures of life, the mortgage, the aging parents, the general grind. But a nagging feeling persisted, a sense that something was off. It started subtly. Isolde's phone, always within arm's reach. The whispered conversations, cut short when I entered the room. The late nights at the office, supposedly working on a big project. I tried to dismiss it, telling myself I was being paranoid, insecure. After all, Isolde had never given me a reason to doubt her. But the unease grew, festering like a hidden wound. One evening I came home early from work. A rare occurrence. I'd finished a major project ahead of schedule and decided to surprise Isolde with dinner. I walked into the house, calling out her name. Silence. I checked the living room, the kitchen, the study. Empty. Then I heard it. A soft, rhythmic sound coming from our bedroom. A sound I instantly recognized. A sound that sent a shard of ice through my heart. I stood frozen outside the door, my hand trembling as I reached for the knob. The sound intensified, a moan, a gasp. I pushed the door open. The scene that unfolded before me was like a punch to the gut, stealing my breath and shattering my world. Isolde, my wife, the woman I loved, was in bed with another man. A man I knew. Quentin, our neighbor. Time seemed to slow to a crawl. The shock was so profound that I couldn't speak, couldn't move. Isolde's eyes widened in horror as she saw me. Quentin scrambled out of bed, his face a mask of shame and fear. I don't remember much of what happened next. A jumble of shouting, accusations, denials. Isolde's tearful pleas, Quentin's stammering apologies. It was all a blur, a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I left the house that night not knowing where I was going, just needing to escape. I drove aimlessly through the city, the rain mirroring the tears streaming down my face. How could this happen? How could the woman I loved betray me in such a brutal way? And with Quentin, of all people. We'd had barbecues together, shared beers, talked about our lives. He seemed like a decent guy. But now he was just another face in the crowd of my betrayers. The next few days were a living hell. I stayed in a cheap motel, unable to face going back to our house, to our life. Isolde called incessantly, leaving tearful messages begging me to talk to her. I ignored them. I couldn't bear to hear her voice, to listen to her lies. I needed time to process, to understand, to grieve. I finally agreed to meet her at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. She looked terrible, her eyes red and swollen, her face pale. She started to cry as soon as she saw me. "Alden, I am so sorry," she sobbed. "It was a mistake, a stupid, awful mistake. I don't know what I was thinking." "A mistake," I repeated, my voice flat. "You were in bed with our neighbor, Isolde. That's not a mistake. That's a deliberate act of betrayal," she tried to explain, to justify her actions. She said she'd been feeling neglected, unappreciated, that I was always working, always distant. That she'd felt lonely, vulnerable. And Quentin had been there, offering her attention, affection. It was a pathetic excuse, and I didn't buy it for a second. "So you decided to solve your problems by sleeping with another man?" I asked, my voice rising. "That's your solution, Isolde? To destroy everything we've built together?" She didn't answer, just continued to cry. I stood up, unable to listen to her lies any longer. "I'm done, Isolde," I said. "I am done with you, with this marriage. I can't forgive you for this. I want—" I walked out of the coffee shop, leaving her sobbing at the table. I felt a pang of guilt, a flicker of the love I once had for her. But it was quickly extinguished by the burning rage and betrayal that consumed me. The divorce was messy and painful. Isolde fought me every step of the way, trying to salvage what was left of our marriage, but I was adamant. I wanted out. I couldn't spend another day with her knowing what she'd done. As the proceedings progressed, I learned more about the affair. It had been going on for months, right under my nose. Isolde and Quentin had been meeting in secret, exchanging messages, even taking weekend trips together. I was the last to know, the fool who'd been blinded by love and trust. The betrayal cut deep, leaving scars that I knew would never fully heal. I lost faith in Isolde, in marriage, in the very idea of love. I became cynical, guarded, afraid to open myself up to anyone again. After the divorce was finalized, I moved out of Chicago, seeking a fresh start, a new life. I bought a small house in Denver, a city I'd always loved. I threw myself into my work, finding solace in the logic and precision of code. I made new friends, explored the mountains, tried to rebuild my life. But the pain lingered, a constant reminder of what I'd lost. I couldn't shake the image of Isolde and Quentin together, the memory of their betrayal. It haunted my dreams, poisoned my thoughts. One day I received a letter from Isolde. It was a long, rambling apology, filled with remorse and regret. She said Shed made the biggest mistake of her life, that Shed lost the best thing she ever had. She begged me to forgive her, to give her another chance. I read the letter with a mixture of emotions. Pity, anger, sadness. But there was no love, no desire to reconcile. The trust was gone, shattered beyond repair. I wrote her a short, polite reply wishing her well. But I made it clear that there was no future for us, no possibility of forgiveness. Time passed. Years even. I started dating again, cautiously, tentatively. I met some wonderful women, but I couldn't bring myself to fully commit, to let go of the fear of betrayal. The scars were too deep, the memories too painful. Then one day I ran into an old friend from Chicago, Brant. We hadn't seen each other in years, but we quickly reconnected, sharing stories about our lives. I told her about Isolde, about the affair, about the divorce. She listened patiently, offering words of comfort and support. You know, Brant said, I always thought there was something strange about Isolde and Quentin. They seemed a little too friendly, a little too close. I frowned. What do you mean? Well, she said, I saw them together a few times when you weren't around, holding hands, whispering in each other's ears. I thought about telling you, but I didn't want to cause trouble. I figured I was just being paranoid. My blood ran cold. Brant's words confirmed my worst fears. The affair had been more than just a momentary lapse in judgment. It had been a calculated, deliberate act of betrayal carried out behind my back for months. Did anyone else know? I asked, my voice trembling. I don't know, Brant said. Maybe, but no one ever said anything to me. I thanked Brant for her honesty, for confirming what I'd always suspected. I felt a surge of anger, a renewed sense of betrayal. But this time it wasn't directed at Isolde. It was directed at Quentin, at the man who'd pretended to be my friend, who'd stabbed me in the back without a second thought. I decided I needed to confront Quentin. I tracked him down through social media, discovering that he'd moved to Los Angeles and was working as a real estate agent. I booked a flight to LA, determined to have my say. I found Quentin at an open house in Beverly Hills. He looked older, heavier, but I recognized him instantly. He didn't recognize me at first. But when I called his name, his face paled. Alden, he stammered. What are you doing here? I came to talk to you, Quentin, I said, my voice low and dangerous. About Isolde, about what you did. He tried to deny it, to downplay the affair, but I wouldn't let him. I told him everything I knew, everything Brant had told me. I accused him of betraying my trust, of destroying my marriage. He finally admitted it, his voice barely a whisper. He said he'd been attracted to Isolde for years, that he couldn't resist her. He apologized, begged for my forgiveness. Forgiveness, I scoffed. You think I can forgive you for this? You ruined my life, Quentin. You destroyed everything I held dear. I didn't hit him, didn't yell at him. I just looked at him with contempt, with disgust. Then I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, alone and ashamed. I felt a sense of closure, of satisfaction. I'd confronted my betrayer, held him accountable for his actions. It didn't erase the pain, didn't undo the damage, but it gave me a sense of control, a feeling that I was finally taking charge of my life. I returned to Denver feeling lighter, freer. I started to focus on the future, on building a new life for myself. I continued to date, eventually meeting a woman named Rowena. She was kind, intelligent, and beautiful, and most importantly, she was trustworthy. We fell in love slowly, cautiously. I shared my story with her, my fears, my insecurities. She listened patiently, offering understanding and support. She helped me to heal, to let go of the past, to embrace the future. Eventually, I was able to trust again, to open my heart to Rowena completely. We got married, bought a house, started a family. I finally found the happiness I thought I'd lost forever. Isolde never remarried. I heard through the grapevine that Shed struggled to find love again, haunted by the guilt of her betrayal. Quentin's real estate career floundered, his reputation tarnished by the scandal. They both paid the price for their actions. I learned a valuable lesson from my experience. That love can be fragile, that trust can be broken, that betrayal can leave lasting scars. But I also learned that it's possible to heal, to forgive, to find happiness again. It takes time, it takes courage, it takes faith. But it's possible, and so my story ends not with bitterness and resentment but with hope and renewal. I am Alden and I survived betrayal, and I am stronger for it. Epilogue. Years later I received an unexpected email. It was from Quentin. He was dying of cancer, he told me, and he wanted to make amends before he passed away. He asked if I would be willing to meet with him to hear his final confession. I hesitated. I didn't know if I could face him again, to relive the pain of the past. But Rowena encouraged me to go, to find closure, to put the final chapter on this painful episode of my life. I flew to Los Angeles and met Quentin in a hospice. He was frail and weak, barely recognizable. He apologized profusely for his actions, expressing deep remorse for the pain he had caused me and Isolde. He told me that the affair had been the biggest mistake of his life, that it had cost him everything. His marriage had fallen apart, his career had crumbled, and he'd been haunted by guilt and regret ever since. I listened in silence, feeling a mixture of pity and anger. But as I looked at him, at his frail body and his haunted eyes, I realized that he had already paid the ultimate price for his betrayal. I found myself offering him forgiveness, not because he deserved it, but because I needed to let go of the past, to release the bitterness that had consumed me for so long. He died a few weeks later. I didn't attend his funeral, but I did light a candle for him, a gesture of peace and forgiveness. And so my story comes to an end. A story of betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately redemption. A story that reminds us that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope for a new beginning.